Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the webinar put on by RevCult and MFour. RevCult helps MFour sell more profitably with Salesforce CPQ. I'm Brian O'Learzik, Vice President of Sales and Marketing here with RevCult. I'll play the MC role today, and we've got a productive session here with Alex, the sales leader over at MFour, and we'll jump right in. Alex, are you still there? Let's make sure quickly, technically, that everything's set up.
I am. Hi, Brian, and everyone on the line.
Perfect. So let's get right to it. We're going to fill about 20 minutes, depending on Q&A. We'll get right to some of the key use cases around CPQ, some of the key value proposition, and hopefully inform for the audience here a better decision point of when CPQ makes sense for them and how best to implement it in a way that adds value. First, let's start off with a brief intro on RevCult. So RevCult is a growth consultancy. We've been helping companies maximize revenue and enterprise value since 2011. We heavily focus on the use of Salesforce as an enablement platform to support that growth in a sustainable, predictable, and profitable way, and have been using the Salesforce ecosystem since 2011 across the entire platform. As you can see on the slide, one of the things that we're most proudest of is our customer achievements. It's not about the technology, it's not about the business process, it's really about the business outcome. And over the last 3 years, we've had 4 customers of ours that have had successful transactions and successful outcomes. Again, that's not the only indication of success. Obviously, there's a number of factors that go into it, but that is a public proof point of the success we've helped our customers achieve. So quickly, let's talk through who Alex and I are. So Brian O'Learzik, again, I'm Vice President of Sales and Marketing here with RevCult. Over the last 20 years, I've been helping companies grow top-line revenue profitably across the entire ecosystem from startup through IPO. Originally based from, grew up in Buffalo, spent a bunch of years on the East Coast, and now based here in San Diego, California. Alex, can you give a brief background?
Yeah. Definitely. Alex Caleo. I've been partnering with the team over at RevCult for a number of years. CPQ, just the latest thing that we've worked with them on. I personally came to MFour about 3 years ago and took over the sales team at a company that's really in hyper growth mode right now, managing about 15 individuals with the main goal of giving our investors as well as our clients a positive return on investment for the work that they're doing with us.
Excellent. So let's get into the agenda. Essentially, we'll go through 4 key agenda items today. One, we'll do a brief background on MFour. As Alex mentioned, a hyper-growth company that's really interesting, doing really cool stuff. We'll go through some of the key use cases that has worked for MFour from a CPQ standpoint and is applicable more broadly across a number of different enterprises, sales rep efficiency, executive approvals, and then reducing financial risk. We'll go through some of the lessons learned that we've experienced across the customers that we've worked in terms of driving revenue and then leveraging CPQ to optimize that revenue growth. And then finally, we'll do some Q&A based on the questions that come in through the audience. So with that said, let's go right into MFour.
Yeah. MFour is a market research company based out of Irvine, California. If you guys think about consumer surveys, I'm sure everybody on the line has received an invitation to participate in a survey, either via email or somebody's called you or sent a piece of mail to your house. And survey research is a multi-billion-dollar industry worldwide. If you think about the progression of consumer communication over time, survey research has really evolved with that. And what MFour is doing is capitalizing on consumer communication shifting to smartphones. We have a mobile application called Surveys on the Go. Feel free to download it if you want to make a couple extra bucks for giving your opinion. And right now we have over 1.3 million people across the country who have downloaded our app and are actively taking surveys with us at any given time. Aside from just standard question and answer, we're able to use location services in panelists' smartphones to send surveys to our respondents when they're in a location or immediately after they leave, and are able to use the camera and the microphone for picture, audio, video capture to add qualitative insights to quantitative survey research. Our clients big consumer-facing product or service companies like Pepsi and Lowe's, who have been two partners that have worked with us for many, many years. Our business is very, very custom, right? So they come to us with problems related to sales, marketing, or operations, and they're looking to use consumer opinion and feedback to help solve problems. And that was why we thought that CPQ could end up being a helpful solution to us. As we were looking to grow and scale our sales team, we needed a solution to help simplify our business so that training and quoting for clients could be more easily implemented. To give a little bit more background to exactly what happens in our quoting process, like I said, pretty complex consultative sale that we're working on. There first has to be an understanding of exactly what the client is trying to accomplish. There are then pricing components that are all custom built for every single project that we complete for our clients. We also need to calculate feasibility, make sure on our end that what the client is requesting is something that we can actually deliver. In the back end, there's a lot of reporting that's requested of us from clients at different levels, and so I need to be able to coordinate with my operations department, both to make sure the project's feasible, but also that they have the resources available to be able to fulfill the projects. The last thing that CPQ has really been great at helping us with, managing internal approvals. All of this impacts quoting in different ways, and over the next couple of slides, we're going to dive into 3 specific ways that CPQ has really helped MFour get sharper about quoting, about requesting approvals, and then about delivering to clients.
Excellent. Excellent, perfect. So let's jump in right into the key use cases that Alex just mentioned. And initially, let's start with sales rep efficiency. And if you're a revenue leader or a growth leader on the line here, everyone's always thinking about, how do I make my salespeople better? How do I make my average salespeople that meet quota, how do I make them go from a C player to a B player? How do I make my B players become A players? And how do I make my A players become all-stars by increasing the velocity by which they can engage with prospects, successfully quote and deliver a proposal to those prospects and actually close business. And so Salesforce efficiency is really the vehicle by which you're increasing your velocity of the effectiveness of your sales team. And in Alex's case, and one of the key things that we were trying to accomplish here was to onboard in weeks, not months. And so as you think about scaling a sales organization, adding more people, and in a very simplistic way, some people think, we'll just add more salespeople and revenue will come. And I was in a meeting a couple of days ago where a CEO said, well, yes, we're going to add more salespeople, revenue will come. And the chief revenue officer pulled me aside afterwards and said, I need your help. Well, let's talk about how sales rep efficiency can be accomplished and how within MFour, CPQ was used to do that.
Right, exactly. And for us, one of the things that we're really trying to focus on with a business that's fairly complex and custom is trying to streamline the decisions that my reps need to make as much as possible so that they're spending their time on the things that are difficult and can't be streamlined, as opposed to anything that's administrative on the back end, such as pricing. And so related to sales rep efficiency, for us, where CPQ helped was with creating pricing for projects after we've discussed them with clients. Basically, for our pricing to be constructed, we have over 100 different items, and my reps can pull from those different items to create tens of thousands of possible configurations for their different projects that we're selling to clients. And what we were able to do with CPQ is, instead of requiring me to train my team on what every single item is and how they could all possibly fit together and really conceptualize that, they now are able with CPQ to go through a guided selling process. Basically, what that means is that I worked with RevCult to come up with about 10 to 15 questions. And by answering those questions, which are all in layman's terms, things like how long is the interview going to be, how many completed responses does your client need, my sales team now are able to answer those approximately 15 questions and go from a list of hundreds of items. The ones on the left that you see in the before picture, that's not even comprehensive of all of the item choices that we had, to now answering about 10 to 15 questions and coming out with about 10 possible items on average that they need to choose from to make their project work. This is really, really helpful for new reps, and even for my existing reps. It's limiting the amount of time and also the chance for error with them having to pick from a really large list. Guided selling helps suggest to them the most likely combinations of items that they're going to pull from based on the questions that they're answering. That means my reps can now engage with clients sooner because they know all the questions to be asking clients to quickly quote the project and then move on from the pricing stage.
Excellent. Excellent. Again, it's about making your good reps great and about making your new reps productive. Makes perfect sense, Alex. So let's go to the next use case, executive approvals. And so when you're in growth mode, we work with a lot of customers, and we'll oftentimes see the pendulum swing from the Wild West where sales reps can do anything to get a deal to the price committee or the pricing board where you meet 3-4 times a week with your CFO, COO, finance organization and hash out what is acceptable or not. And again, that works for a while, but ultimately, and when you're scaling an organization, you need a tool and a capability that allows the approval process to make sense, to be logical, to be easy to follow, easy to execute for all the relevant parties, and then also auditable so that in a single repository you know the history of what happened and why. Can you talk a little bit about your experience there with the approval process there, Alex?
Yeah, definitely. And for us, the approval processes that were important were twofold. One was pricing, and I think anybody involved in revenue pricing quoting on the phone understands that there's a need to have some checks and balances on what reps are quoting clients. And we really didn't have any other than trust in the reps and order validation once a project was sold. But at that point, it was a little difficult to go back to a client and let them know the rep gave them too large of a discount. We needed more money. So from pricing, we really wanted to get ahead of that and have an internal approval process that was automated before a client ever saw a price from us. And then the other aspect to approval is it was a little custom to our business, and I'm sure everybody on the phone can relate to something to their business that's custom that they might want to have an approval process for that's more documented and automated. For us, it's around feasibility, because not only do my team need to price the projects, we need to make sure that we're setting up on the sales side our operations department to be able to execute on those projects. And if we are ever quoting something, let's say 1,000 completed interviews across a very niche target audience, and the reality is we're not feasible to actually provide that to a client, that can set both the sales and operations teams, really our whole company, up to disappoint the client and not deliver. We then set up a manual process internally that involved a lot of emailing, back and forth, multiple individuals from the team having to be involved and get eyes on that feasibility quoting every single time before it could happen. And we're really excited with what CPQ to bring to streamline both of those approval processes for us. What, from a pricing standpoint, CPQ was able to do for us is really simplify the process. So now my team knows if they want to provide up to a 15% discount to a client on a project, they have the ability to do that overall. If they ever want to provide a discount above that, instead of having to come find me or find our chief revenue officer or even our CEO, because we're still a 100-person company, CEO is still involved in some decisions, and manually receive that approval and maybe get it verbally. And then if there's a question from finance later, not have any documentation. Now, whether it's for the entire project or for a specific item, if our rep is trying to give a discount above 15%, they're able to try to do that. And as soon as they save their quote into Salesforce, which is a process that happens in CPQ before you're able to actually generate a statement of work, an actual document for a client to sign, I am receiving, or the appropriate individual on my operations team is receiving, an automated email. that email is saying either, hey, your rep is trying to discount something more than 15%, or your rep is trying to sell this project. Is this something that MFour can fulfill from an operational standpoint? Really easy when you receive those emails as the executive sponsor to give approval. You don't receive the email and then need to click on a Salesforce link and find the right field and enter more information. All you need to do with that email is hit reply, type in the word yes or the word no, and CPQ is smart enough to then automate and enter into Salesforce that quote has either been approved or rejected by the executive sponsor, and either enables the rep to move forward or lets them know that they need to try again with a different offering before they can continue to move forward. The nice parts about this, obviously streamlines the process, but for us, documentation is nice as well, because now there's never a he said, she said about what was or was not approved. It's all central into the Salesforce system, which is the last real big benefit for CPQ we're going to talk about here is how we were able to consolidate and make our process from a management standpoint more efficient with CPQ.
Yeah, exactly, Alex. And for everyone on the line, hopefully you can see some of the more functional and technical implementations of this. And from a design standpoint, it's really important that you create this the design and the experience for the users in an elegantly simple way that makes sense, that doesn't require 6 hours of training, and it's very logical, such that when you ask your CFO, your VP of Finance, or your COO, or your VP of Operations to be involved, they're going to do that because they want to, and it's easy. So let's go to our final use case for CPQ relevant for MFour, really financial risk. And again, one of the key foundational elements of being able to drive that automation in the approval process is understanding your revenue mechanics and your cost mechanics. And so, Alex, can you touch a little bit more upon how you address this within MFour?
Yeah, definitely. And for us, really, it was about consolidating quoting into one platform so that all documentation and quoting occurred through the Salesforce system. Previously, we had a quoting calculator. To give some background and context for why that would be used, we have, let's say somebody wants to complete an interview that's 10 minutes long with us. Depending on how many people out of the population are expected to qualify for that survey, we have a base price for a 10-minute interview. Let's say it's $10, but that price is going to vary by, maybe only a couple cents, but maybe a couple of dollars if the incidence in the population becomes very low. In order to calculate what that new price should be, taking the rack rate and then accounting for that incidence rate, we were using a quoting calculator that was in Microsoft Excel. And so my rep would have to come up with that price on a custom basis through Excel. Then they would have to enter that price into Salesforce, and then they would have to take that price from Salesforce and manually enter it into a Word document for their statement of work that they were providing to a client, right? And so you can see a little bit on your screen that transfer of information from a complex Excel quoting document to Salesforce, then to a Word document, created margin for error. There was just too much human decision-making and transfer of data for us to be confident that this was always going to be right. And so what we were able to set up with CPQ was one centralized platform for this quoting. We enter the correct information in custom fields that RevCult helped us design, click a button, and the pricing is automatically calculated for you. You click another button, and your statement of work is automatically generated. It's all through Salesforce and really minimizes the transfer of information, which minimizes the chance for human error, and make sure that every time we're providing the client the quote with the correct pricing based on what the reps were able to generate through the CPQ system, filling out a couple of custom fields.
Excellent. Excellent. So now let's jump right into some of the key lessons learned based on our experience with MFour and more broadly across all of our customers. And the first thing you see on the slide, it's really a business problem, not a technical problem. and I know a lot of times when people start talking about CPQ or thinking about CPQ, a lot of times the conversation talks about products and bundles and features and product rules, and it gets into the tactical element of how does the system work and what does the system support. And the reality is that the way to think about how do I leverage CPQ to drive scale and drive revenue growth in a more predictable way aligned to my margin requirements is it's really about a business conversation, about your go-to-market, about how you compete, how you differentiate, how you discount, and the underlying mechanics of the services that you deliver. It's not about products, bundles, features, product rules. Get the business people involved early, and I think that's the second bullet on the slide here is really about the business constituents. And again, you want the right constituent across the organization that understand what is the services or products that you're delivering, what are the key cost drivers and elements of those products and services, and then how do you align those drivers with how you go to market. And the people that should be involved are really those business constituents that have influence and impact to make decisions in those areas. And a lot of times the Salesforce administrator or Salesforce owner is involved on the technical side or the tactical side, but to successfully implement CPQ and really move the needle in terms of revenue and profit, even if you're the Salesforce owner and own the CPQ implementation, go get your COO, go get your CFO, go get your Chief Revenue Officer, and maybe even your CEO involved early because you need their help to make this successful. So those are a couple of the key lessons learned. We've got a few questions that came up, and maybe, actually this one for you, Alex, and related to that second topic. Who did you involve in your conversation internally when you were thinking about rolling out CPQ, and then also from an implementation standpoint, what was your team like that was involved to drive the decision processes?
Yeah, definitely, and it's a really good question because it wasn't only driven by me. I involved a number of different departments with the build out initially, getting the high level idea for the system. This was something that I worked on first with my Chief Operations Officer. From there, the VP of Operations was heavily involved, as was our SVP of Finance, because we were kind of tying together some manual processes for all of our teams into this one CPQ system. And then as we rolled CPQ out, the first thing that we did, if any of you have worked with RevCult in the past, I know they're really good and diligent about building things in the sandbox, basically a mock CPQ environment before they ever move it to production, which is your real life functioning Salesforce environment. And so we built in the Salesforce with a lot of consultation just between me and RevCult, the initial idea for what our CPQ setup was going to look like. And then RevCult came into our office and presented that to my entire sales team. It was really good for them to get to see it in the sandbox before it went into production because there were a lot of requested edits that they found. We then made those and started giving slowly access to different members of my team. I found the people who either have heavy volume or a little bit more tech savvy and had them be beta testers. So they first received CPQ in the production environment. And then once they were able to test to make sure that everything worked well for them, that the process was in fact helping them, and that there weren't any bugs or issues that we needed to fix, then the rest of the team received access. Brian or whoever asked the question, I hope that was helpful. I would be happy to fill in any gaps if that wasn't exactly what you guys were looking for. Perfect.
Yeah, I think you were spot on, Alex. And again, you approached it the right way by getting the right constituents involved early, and I think you got an outcome that aligned with that. And it looks like we've got some time for one last question with and the questions related to ASC 606. So with ASC 606 going live, how does that impact CPQ? And I'm not sure if all the folks on the line understand ASC 606, but it's a new accounting regulation that helps to standardize the revenue recognition processes across all different company types. And I guess what that means is the upside, if you're in accounting and you're using GAAP, it reduces the variability between a software company and a services company. So on the accounting side, you get a standard way, and it's more easy to move from one organization to another. The downside is that it can be it increases the level of complexity to implement and enforce from a sales and revenue standpoint. And so the reality is how that works now going forward is you really need to know and account for any value add that you include as part of your sales process, and that is included as part of a contract, and include that in your revenue recognition calculations. And I guess a simple example related to that would be if you think about a typical B2B sales process at the end of every month or every end of quarter. In the old days, you would have end of quarter, end of month sweeteners, free training, extended warranties, free year added on the back end that would get slipped into contracts behind the scenes and really wouldn't impact the business from an accounting or profit or from an accounting standpoint thereafter. And the reality is going forward that every sweetener that you add in on the deal now needs to be accounted for proactively and then established and considered as you think about revenue recognition. And so really, with ASC 606 coming back specifically to the question, it really increases the need for tools like CPQ that allow you to really understand all your costs and service components that are included in contracts and verify in a low friction way, both for your sales organization as well as your accounting organization, how to account for those from a revenue recognition standpoint. So hopefully that was useful. We've gone almost about 30 minutes, so appreciate the questions that came up, and hopefully you found the webinar session useful today. Alex and myself are both on LinkedIn, so for any follow-up questions, feel free to engage with us, and we'll be happy to help. Additionally, for those folks that might find this useful for other constituents internally, we'll send a follow-up with a copy of the webinar for reference. Everyone have a great day, and we'll talk with you soon.